Hi there, I have about 26 hours before this needs to go up. I'm recording this on the evening of the 30th. So seeing as I don't know how long this is going to take to film and then edit, let's just get started. Hello, I'm Dominic and happy Halloween. You are at a very strange angle, not just to make it slightly uneasy and weird because again, Halloween, whatever justification I could try to make of that. No, it's just because this is the only angle I could come up with where you could see both myself and the subject of this video, that being the pumpkins, as I assume you'll have been able to have guessed from the thumbnail title and actually seeing this thing in front of me right here. The alternative would be that you were on the other side of the room, or that it would just have to be framed in such a way that you can see the pumpkin being carved, but then my head is cut out of frame. And again, while a headless me may be unfitting with the whole Halloween thing, it's not really what I'm after. So you looking down is going to have to be what it's going to be like for the duration of this video. Just regarding the format of the video itself, because I've never done something like this before, more of like a crafty vlog kind of thing. I don't know yet how it's going to come out in the edit. Obviously, I'm not just going to subject you to an unedited duration of however long it's going to take to do all of this carving. Ideally, I will end up finding a way to speed up the actual carving sections, and then there'll be some kind of royalty-free music playing over the top, as is the manner of a lot of those vlogs so far as I'm aware. But again, complete novice to any kind of video editing. I just do the basics of cutting bits together, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to work out how to do that. So if not, I am just going to cut out the whole carving sections as well. That's annoying, but again, I'll come to that when I come to it. This is what actually while I'm thinking about it, it's on the fly. Even though you're up there for the majority of this, I have also got my phone, which I will try to record some slightly close-up stuff when I'm specifically talking about some of the stuff I've maybe carved at that moment, if it's not something I can hold up and show to this camera here. That would be too awkward, for instance. But I think those are kind of the formalities out of the way. So we'll just say that pumpkin carving is something that I personally have been doing probably since around the age of 15, 16, something like that. And not just like generic pumpkin carving either. It would always be something from either a TV show or film or video game or something like that. Now, in terms of execution of those, I actually do think that people's kind of more the traditional pumpkin carvings are actually a lot more effective. But I prefer the challenge. I prefer to try to see what I can pull off and achieve in this case. So even if these don't look absolutely brilliant, there's still, again, going to be my design. Well, my attempts at designs that obviously other people have come up with from whatever mediums we're sourcing from. From that, usually I would be picking all of these myself, but because this year we have obviously the YouTube channel and all the other social medias that I've been trying to promote and set up, on the Instagram at the Ragnarok Chronicles, link as ever in the description below, I asked people what I should do for the pumpkins this year, and I got a number of suggestions, many of which I then found myself wanting to do, which is why I'm actually now about to do more pumpkin carving than I think I've ever done, because I've got 2 pumpkins here, each of which are going to have 3 carvings on them around the different sides. So again, this could end up being a long video, or again, you'll know from the timestamp depending on how this has ended up. But yeah, just in terms of those suggestions that they've given me, I couldn't do them all, even though I'm doing a lot like this, so I do just want to acknowledge off the bat with the ones that I'm not doing. For instance, someone suggested I do Michael Myers. I'm assuming the killer from Halloween films, rather than the actor or anything like that, which again would be very fitting because it is Halloween. I just feel, knowing my own personal carving capabilities, that it would just come up looking like a generic face. I'm aware that there will be, I'm sure I have seen pumpkins that have done very well with Michael Myers, but I could not pull it off. And I want I'm going to be identifiable for what it is. For a similar reason, I am not going with the suggestion for a brain either, although again, another good suggestion, just because I feel with how I'm would try to execute that, it will just look like a load of squiggling lines and could be like a pile of spaghetti, or the Pokemon Tangela, however you pronounce it. So again, not going with that, fair suggestion. And then another one, again, not this is all of them, but just another one off my head that I'm not going with, was the Billy puppet from the Saw franchise, which I'm not doing because I don't think I could, it's because I've actually done it before. And again, if you're following the Instagram if I've managed to do this, which is my plan by the time this video goes up, I will have posted some photos of some of the previous pumpkins that I've done in previous years, one of which, hopefully I still have photos of it, was of that very puppet. This was like 5 years ago or something, so I'll try to drag those up. Okay. So if those are the ones that I'm not doing, what am I going with? Well, on this first pumpkin, which I'm kind of thinking of as the simpler pumpkin, based upon the designs that I've come up with, we have, first of all, the face of... Actually, no, I'll show the designs instead, because this might be easier to see. We have the face of Grile, with then as the kind of a second thing, him holding his scythe from the cover of my book, because, you know, it was suggested to me I should definitely do that. Well, I can't let that one go, it's the book. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So you've got the hood coming up top here with your basic skeletal face, and then going to be a gap underneath to kind of denote the shape of the chin. Obviously you've got your hand here, and then the scythe, which is actually, it's shorter on this diagram. It's actually going to be curving around the side of the pumpkin itself. Then another thing which was just suggested to me was to do a cat. Fair enough, cats are a big part of my content, more on Twitter though. So yeah, we're also going to have on the other side here this little cat face here with some paws and a tail. As for the other pumpkin, the more difficult pumpkin, I was suggested that I should do something from Hellboy. I've specifically ended up going from the film Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. The main ones I'm going to be looking at here is the character Johann Kraus, which I've either worked out how to show a picture of on the screen there, or at the very least his name will have shown up, and you can then Google that if you don't know what he's like already. He's kind of like a steampunky, mechanoidy, filled with steam person, android thing. That was a great description. Now, with this one, this is going to be one of the cases as kind of the circumstance I've had in previous ones as well, where I'm going to end up putting in so much detail that it may end up actually not looking like the thing that it's going to look like, but I'm going to try to fit in as much detail as I can. And this goes again, if you can see that at all. So we're going to have kind of this dome at the top here, then also seeing kind of the internal mechanisms here. You've got the vents that kind of appear around the base of his neck, and then whatever apparatus there, with the fins coming out the side, and then kind of what I would describe as a Dalek neck around the base here. But also, because I wanted to get something that was definitely recognisable, again, from that film, because there's a lot of... I think the suggestion was just something from Hellboy. The reason for that is there's actually quite a bit of creativity, again, at least in those original films. I haven't seen the recent one, and I don't know the comic books, but from those anyway. So I wanted to do something else in this film as well. So I'm also going to go for a tooth fairy around the side. And then the last thing that was suggested to me that I'm selecting to do here was a Celtic symbol. Now, that isn't really the kind of thing I'd usually do in this case, but you know what, I felt, sure, I'll give it a go. As you may have spotted, now I don't know, again, depends on how well that's shown up. I tried out a few different kind of symbols to see what would work, and with most of them, kind of like with the brain, I feel like they could very easily just be mistaken for squiggly lines, or they just wouldn't show up in general as what it's meant to be. So I've picked one specifically that is slightly simpler in design, but should be a lot more likely to be recognised as kind of that sort of symbol. And I'm also happy with that going on the Hellboy pumpkin, difficult pumpkin, because that second film, at least, The Golden Army, has some other stuff to do with Celtic. Well, there's some Celtic links in there anyway, like you have Prince Nuada. Nuada is something from Celtic mythology, and so forth, like that. Okay, I think that's kind of all the description stuff that I need to get done, so we shall just get started on the carvings. Notice here that I've left the top open. First of all, I've done kind of the zigzag top rather than just a circle around. That's just how I was always suggested that I should do it. I don't know if there's any benefit to it grip-wise, because when the pumpkins get older, by which I mean like if over a few days if left outside or in hot conditions, they will start to shrivel up, and then a part of that will be that the cap shrinks as well and then falls through the hole. Don't know if it's a benefit to doing it this way instead of that, whatever. But I'm keeping it open now as well, because as I'm carving, I'm going to want to be emptying the pumpkin, and if it's stuck on there, it may already kind of start sticking, and it'd just be an awkward thing to have to keep suckering it off and putting it back on again. But with this, when we're doing designs such as these, because I'm going to end up carving out sections that leave kind of the actual physical remaining pumpkin connecting by thinner connections, I'm going to start by doing the smaller bits on the inside first and then working my way outwards. Because if I cut out the hood first and then started doing the details of the face, as I'm leaning in on the face, I could end up pushing it back and it could all snap off and break. So we'll start with the small bits first and then remove all with the structural integrity at the end. So we'll start literally quite literally at the centre. Just got a small blade here and we just do a gentle outline of the nose. Not all the way through the skin at this stage, I'm just trying to get, as I say, the general outline of this. Also, will note, because since I moved back from university last time I did this, some of my stuff has been like packed away and moved to other places. I can't find exactly everything that I've used for pumpkin carving before, at least in the last few years when I've done this again at university. So I'm fairly confident I don't actually have all of the equipment that I usually would have been using back then, but I'll make do with what I can now find. Okay, so because with the nose here, or rather the lack of nose, because of the shape here, I'm actually, rather than just cutting it out in one whole chunk, I'm actually going to be splitting up in small sections. So we've got the top half of the gap here, which now that I've done that general outline, I've got a longer, thinner blade that I'm now just using to break all the way through as such. And it doesn't matter if I'm a little bit, it doesn't matter if I cut like inside the bit that's ultimately going to be disappearing, because again, that's ultimately going to be disappearing. So I've made my connections here. I'll take a blunt bit and just push that through. There we go. If I can find it, we have here our little triangular bit of thing, which is now going to go. Oh yeah, you can see that. So this laptop this is recording to it's kind of over the lip of the table, so I can't completely see it. But yes, you can see I've got this casserole pot here full of. It's a little bit bright, isn't it? Oh. Whatever else I can do about now. Yeah, casserole pot full of the insides I'd already scooped out as well alongside doing all the diagrams and outlines on the pumpkin itself, just to save time at the beginning. I have got another casserole pot as well, in case I need another one, which is also where the other pumpkin is currently sitting. So yeah, so cut out the top bit of his nose, just clear away that hair, and then, actually I'll stick with this one because it's slightly, let's say, thinner, and I'm now just going to clean up the lower parts of the nose here, just cut that out, and then once I've made those bits of incisions, just also making some deeper incisions as well, because sometimes, because you can't always judge exactly how the blade is going in, it doesn't always create a clear passage all the way through. Sometimes the back of the hole is a lot thinner than the front. So we'll just widen that up further inside, and again, we'll then just push in those bits there. We can tidy up the inside of that a little bit later because of the flesh of the pumpkin. There's some strands hanging down in there, but that's not what I'm worrying about right now. I've got the overall shape. I'm happy with that. Can you see that? Yeah, there we go. That's got your little gap for the nose in skull. Now, I say I'm going to do basically the same thing for the... Yeah, I'll do the eyes next. I mean, at this point it doesn't really matter because, again, I haven't compromised any of the structural integrity. So this can go all the way through, so we'll just do a light outline first, just along here with the sturdier blade. Again, I am in no way a professional at doing this sort of thing, so I don't know if there's any real merit to my decision making here, but I find that with this one here, which I was using to then actually poke all the way through, because it's a slightly thinner blade, it's slightly flimsier, it's not as good for making the initial incisions. So if I create a guidelines with something that's a bit sturdier, and then it helps when I now do this, where I can now push all the way through it. Again, because there's a lot of curves, you also want to make sure that, even though I say this is slightly thinner, it does get broader slightly, that you don't suddenly jut all the way through and you make a cut that's a lot wider than you were hoping to do. That's also why, in general, you probably don't want to have too many cuts for separate features that are right next to each other, in case you like for instance, if the nose was slightly closer to the eye here, I could accidentally slice straight through the two of them, which obviously I don't want. But here, this is fine. I may actually want to switch over to a slightly different tool. Because, again, let's see how this works. So obviously this is just the hilt of a spoon, which is not a sharp, but now I'm not so much worried about cutting through this thing. I'm just wanting to make sure that all of the lines are smooth. Because again, notice this is thinner than... I keep referring to thin in different dimensions in these cases. It's not as wide as the blade still is, even if this is narrower compared to other ones. So this, and also because it's not as sharp, there's less of a risk of the incision going wrong, slipping in the wrong direction. So because the lines are already mostly here, I can now just do this to clean it up. That feels more or less distinct. So now back to just pushing this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have one more instance. It's probably going to happen a few times where it's not cut evenly straight through. So I'm just going to tidy that up a little bit here. Just cut out some of the inside of the socket further in. There we go, that's made it more of an even cylinder, even tunnel, rather than, again, narrowing down onto the far side. But yeah, that works. Okay, now for the exact same thing on the other one. Again, I'm continually talking through this because, again, I don't know how the edit is going to turn out. So just in case it doesn't work to speed things along or to cut these sections out completely, I just want to make sure that you have something that you can pay attention to, because I realise, again, unfortunately, because of all the angles of this and so forth, well, I've started now, I can't change things. Because of how this has all turned out, I realise you're not necessarily going to see all the detail as I'm doing it. So again, I want something for you to note upon. Do this, here we go. Okay, so again, I've made the incisions deeper as best that I can with that knife, but because I'm now getting to the point where, especially on kind of the inside and outside, it's narrower. If I keep trying to push the blade in a little bit further, it's going to cut more than I want. So I'll transition over to the spoon, which is narrower, can afford to do those, and because it's not as sharp, there's less risk of it suddenly cutting through in there. Oh, you came out the front this time. Okay, if you can see from that, again, this is, of the three things so far, this is the most like this, where it's basically nothing at the tip. So we are definitely going to want to start just trimming away at the inside of this eye socket, like so. Now, in the books and on the front cover of the book, Gift of the Manson itself, you'll see that Gryle has yellow lights in his eye sockets. Now, there's no real way for me to pull that off in this case. Like, you could... there is a whole thing that some people can do, where you can partially, like, shave it down without going all the way through, and that can allow for some different amounts of brightnesses of the light that subsequently comes through. I'm going to end up trying that on Johann Kraus one, but no, I'm going to try this here. Well, clearly, even if I change my mind about that, I can't anymore because I've already just removed this stuff. But yes, so obviously, I mean, either way, this is never going to be a perfect or brilliant representation. We're just getting the main outlines done. Okay, so we've got the eyes, got the nose. At this stage, we're just going to go for the brow ridge. And again, as alluded to previously, when doing these designs, to try to make them as detailed as possible, I do end up including features which perhaps are unnecessary to include, and as such the design may become a bit cluttered. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You really can't tell until the final execution when you've got the candle in there and it's all lit and you see. But I'm taking the risk here again just to make it that bit more detailed, add a bit more to the face. So even though he doesn't have flesh to have a brow, he still has that ridge on his forehead. Okay, so we've got our basic incisions, and we're going to cut it a little bit deeper in this case. Again, it doesn't matter if we cut into the thing that's going to be removed, because again it's going to be removed, that's not going to make a difference. Just what we don't want to do is cut into the bit of pumpkin that's meant to remain. I've never done this in front of people before. Again, I've been doing this for years, but it's usually something I'll just do on my own in the kitchen. Some people have walked through, like if I was doing it, well, in one of my previous places while at university, I said done it in the kitchen, it's kind of connected with the living room all in one place. So I was doing it in front of the TV, and some people have walked in on me while doing that, but I've never had to explain myself, just say it, put it that way, while I was doing this properly. So yeah, this is, as someone who has previously and will continue to profess that he is not great at talking, especially to people online, yeah, this is a whole other experience for me, on top of just doing a greater quantity than I usually would. Right. I think I can probably afford to move a little bit there, but other than that, that is a good brow. Alright, so again, I'll just show that up to you here. Oh boy, this is taking a long time. Okay, so now we're going to get to the mouth. Because we have teeth in here, I'm going to want to make sure I'm very careful with this. I'm going to cut out the teeth individually first and probably move the gap from between them and then focus on the far sides rather than trying to do it all at once. So because I'm going in for very small, precise ones at this point, I'm actually going straight into this one here because I don't want to risk doing something that's slightly thicker, like this one, just in case. So yeah, mouth, well, teeth specifically, and eyes. Well, not sockets like I've just done here, but other eyes like I'll be doing with the cats later. Yeah, those are definitely the most precise and finicky of things that I... Oh, this is very narrow here. Okay, we're going to see how that one goes later. Yeah, of the kind of elements of a pumpkin design that I will end up doing. Alright, so hopefully you can see here, we've managed to get the mouth. It's not the neatest thing in the world, but you can see, again, hopefully that we've got the outlines of the various teeth and fangs, more or less, and also the curls up to, again, kind of represent, I don't know what you'd call those parts of the bones on the skull, but to get more of kind of the bone shape. But yeah, we've got the mouth done now. So if we just, because these last bits, at least for this first one, because again we've got a number of these guys, is going to be long. For the first bit, these last bits are kind of more broad strokes, so hopefully these should be easier to get through, so we can just, again, still being careful because we're trying to keep the curvature in mind that I've drawn out, but if we can just make some general incisions, like very close to cutting all the teeth off there. So again, this is one of the examples where I'm lucky in that case. I could have just messed all of that up. So let's again make sure that the blade is pointing the right way to not just go shooting upwards. That's the nice thing there is because we've already made those initial cuts, it can kind of just glide through and follow what's already there. And also, yes, with these bigger ones we can just pull them out rather than having to push them through. Clean up the inside just a little bit. Yeah, we've got the outline of our chin of the skull. Now we just have the hood to go. So actually what I'm probably going to do with this one is, like I did with the nose at the beginning, is actually cut this up into smaller sections within the hood itself, so I can take it out in pieces. There we go. There's that top bit. Of course, it's kind of a reversal, isn't it? Because the hood should be the bit that's dark, but that's the bit that all the light is now going to be coming through, and that's solely, you know, because of the practicalities of how to then carve the rest of it into existence. Sometimes dark must become light and light must become dark when you're doing this sort of thing. Not to sound pretentious or anything like that. And with that, again, as I keep on saying, it's not brilliantly neat, but that could be tidied after finished filming. We have our first carving here with our little skull face, with then the hood coming over the top. Right, down to number 2. Over an hour later, or just over an hour later. This better not take 6 hours. Okay. Right, in this case, once again, we're going to start with what is small. There isn't a centre to this one per se. And actually, once we get to the blade itself, hopefully that can all come out in one big swoop, like the hood did before. So actually, hopefully this will be quicker. But the hand is the bit where everything's going to be really tiny. So we want something that can get some really precise incisions to get on the bones. Because we're going to make it clear that it's his hand, I've kind of drawn it so it breaks up the fingers into, not anatomically correctly, but some indication of the separate bits, digits. So just tiniest bit of cuts to begin with, just to get those outlines. How are we going to do this one? This is probably going to be another case for the hair clip, because it is the smallest. I'm also just going to see what happens if I just push straight through. Now that I've made those initial incisions, can I just get this to push through to the other side? Wiggle it a bit to clear out some of the other stuff. And honestly, yeah, yep, I'm definitely through to the other side. It's just a matter of, is this a hole that is wide enough that the light is going to shine through it? Which again is something that I have come across in some previous years, where basically using a very similar thing to this, you end up with, you have the shapes that you want, but they've become so now precise that they don't necessarily show up in candlelight. No, it's not going to go far enough. Yeah, bigger than I would have liked. Oh, I think that'll definitely let at least some glow through, so I think that's okay. So if I now just repeat that for the other 4 of the first bones, the other ones are going, well, they're bigger, so they shouldn't, or that they should be able to done more traditionally with the knives. And either way, again, with those other bones, because they're definitely going to show up, they're going to have a much higher chance of showing up. It's not the end of the world if these small ones at the end don't, because you're still going to get the general impression. If you really just push up against the insides of the hole that you are making, just to ensure that it's not all funneling toward just automatically down the exact same very narrow incision that you've already made. Just make sure you're trying to widen up, push out of the way any of the pumpkin flesh that's building up the surrounding parts of it. Again, it's not going to be perfect because this isn't sharp. I actually just accidentally made that a bit wider than I wanted, but nothing I can do about that now. It's already done. So I'll just try not to make the same thing of this final one. And so again, that's ended up slightly closer to the other main bone that I'm going to be looking to carve. So we'll just have to be careful when doing that next. In fact, I may do that one first, just so I remember to pay attention to it. So if I'm just actually now making that 4th finger, middle part of the bone, slightly shorter so that it doesn't go straight into the end bone. Again, not a doctor. I don't know what these things are called. I'm just going to be very careful here that the fingers don't cut into one another. So what I've actually now just done is, rather than trying to attempt a rounded end, I've just made the ends of these bones pointed, because it's going to be a lot easier just to get the incisions in without having to do loads of extras to try to go gradually round in a curve, which again, is the more incisions that you have to do, the greater the risk of something going wrong. And sometimes you just meet random resistance, so you just want to be careful that your blade isn't slipping in or feels like it's being pushed into the wrong direction. Yeah, I've used this bit before as well, I know, because this is what you want for the small stuff. How can I forget about you? Okay, so I have just cut a little bit further than I meant to, but that shouldn't be a problem in the way that that's turned out. We have basically the same things happen again. It's kind of come down in the same way, so I don't know if there's something about the structure of this pumpkin specifically at that specific spot that kind of there's kind of weak point lines, that's the thing in pumpkins, that, or due to its general shape, the curvature and the ridges at this specific point, if it would naturally cause stuff to suddenly go down a different path of least resistance. I don't know, but just needing to be careful therefore. But I'm basically done with done with the fingers at this point. I still need to do the hand, but that seems okay. Sure. Alright, let's Well, I'm going to move where I wanted the main part of the hand to be backwards, just to make sure it's further away from where my previous slipped cuts are. Just so I don't risk losing any of the above fingers that I just made. And because, again, the design keeps on going this way anyway, it's not an issue that it goes back further this way. And also, because I'm only doing the one hand, it's not like I'm having to match up symmetrically with another one. So if I just cut actually this into a segment, which will then be easier to extract rather than trying to cut out the whole finagly knuckles all in one go. Okay, so if we can just see here how we have obviously the main part of the hand here, we've got our 4 main parts of the fingers, but then also 4 smaller bits here as well, just to represent the fingertips, just to absolutely make it more look like it's made of bones rather than one continuous hand. Now for the rest of the scythe. So on the book cover itself, the artists put kind of little... It's not just a smooth handle to the scythe itself, there's kind of points and jaggedness to it as well, so I've tried to replicate that as best I can. So we're going to have our little notches going here, in and out. So I'm cutting it out, so that doesn't matter. Actually, that's the point. Yeah, I can just cut straight through at this point, and then we can remove the notches afterwards. So just do one main vertical line down like this to begin with. Making sure I've found where I cut. Yep, there's the base. Of course, just as I'm moving the pumpkin around, I want to make sure we don't put any pressure on this side because we don't want to accidentally cause the face to cave in. It still has a general shape. Yeah, I think for the sake of time we'll do that one there. So here we have the second carving. So you've got your hand here, and obviously the blade curving around the side of the pumpkin there. Now, just to our third case on this one. Well, yeah, I said before, I justified the inclusion of the Celtic symbol because it was kind of connected to other stuff in the whole movie. I would justify the cat on this one because there is a cat in the books. It's not really made a thing of, but yeah, Philip's mother, in the beginning of the summer, adopts an elderly black cat, Natiago. So let's say this is Natiago. Right, so again, once more, starting in the centre and working our way outwards, because then this is definitely going to be one where there is risk to structural integrity based on how I'm doing the outline of the face. So just start with the nose in this case. So just careful incisions because we've got some curvature in there as well. This will be another case where I'll likely split it up into sections to remove rather than cutting it all out in one go. So if we just make another cut just on the top here. Okay. And just make sure it's gone all the way through. Both of those cases are a little hard to do at sides because they're narrower, but yeah, I can get that out and then we can try to push through the rest. So what are you guys doing for Halloween? Anything interesting? Done carvings of your own? Doing any... well, social guidelines approved equivalent of trick-or-treating, anything like that, just within your own households or anything of that ilk? what we got going on? Watching scary movies, not acknowledging it at all, which is fair enough in your own right. I mean, you're watching a pumpkin carving video, but fair, yeah, you don't have to do anything at all. There's no obligation either. Maybe you can't, maybe there's certain circumstances, whatever. I'm rambling, as could have been expected to happen. Let's actually just empty out some other stuff that I've left in here as well. Okay, so usually when I do eyes, I do them in this kind of style here, which actually isn't applicable in any of the ones I'm doing this year, so I wanted to make sure it's included somewhere. And this is just a method by which we can acknowledge the existence of both the pupil and the iris, as well as the overall shape. So if we cut out these crescent shapes on the side, leaving the iris as being a physical bit in the middle, and then just pop out a little hole there, yeah, that just gives you a little bit more detail than if you just do a general hole in the face like we did for Grial sockets before. Now in hindsight, I really should have done the pupil first. Hopefully not going to make that much of a difference, but let's make something so. Pupil, hairpin. Actually, this one, when I did the outlines, I did them as slight kind of ovals or slits, just with slightly more cat-like, but just within the practicalities of this, I think just any kind of pinhole will do. And again, just, when you're trying to widen it, just really trying to make sure it's forced to not just automatically go down the exact same very narrow incision. You can twirl it around a bit if you want to widen the exterior end, or that's probably, again, not doing as much for the far side. Okay, I think that's good enough. Actually, just while I'm here, I'll do the other one on the other side, so again I don't forget to do it first. Slightly more of a horizontal pupil, this one now, but we'll make it work. There we go, slightly more vertical now. And we'll just push out a bit more of the inside. A little bit bigger, so we can get a bit more light through. Not that it's the most important part, that we make sure the light is coming through. Not as neat as I would like, but well, yeah, again, once you've done something, you can't really do much about it, especially if you're about to do other elements around it as well. You can't afford to try to correct things by making it slightly bigger and cutting around it. I could make an ASMR thing out of all of this, all the squeaks that are coming out of the pumpkin as I'm carving it. That's assuming that they're even picking up on the microphone, which I have no idea if they are. They're very squeaky. Just pressed slightly in on Grial's face there. Luckily I didn't put my full weight onto it. Yeah, so that's what they look like once they're carved out. Obviously they'll look hopefully even better once lit up, but I just wanted to show them at this stage. Okay. So now I'm going to be careful with the whiskers, because again the eyes have gone slightly bigger than I was hoping for, hence slightly lower. So I'm just going to be careful cuts here, just to make sure that I don't cross over into the eye incisions, and I think I've managed to completely mess up, which is good if I have. Yes, I have. I will, however, need to widen this up on the inside. whiskers just moving on to the mouth, and then we can do the outline of the face. Once again, just with this mouth, I'll make sure I'm not cutting into the whiskers or the nose. Just thinking, I wonder if part of this could be put on the Instagram, because that was where, again, said at the beginning, people gave the suggestions, but considering, well, I'm coming up on 2 hours for this first pumpkin plus the talking at the beginning. So if we say it's going to be about the same for the other one, then that's going to be 4 hours total. I don't think that fits with the Insta of Instagram. We have our face. Now I did plan to do the tail and paws as well, so yeah, I will stick to that, after which I'll show you what it all looks like, and we will have reached our halfway point. Alright, and we are done. Here we have, I find a safe place to hold this by. Lucky cat. Let's try this. Okay, so we paw there, and then we've got our tail. I can't really point to it safely. Up here as well. With all this therefore carved, for as I next get on to carving the other one, let's just have a look at this when it's actually lit up in the dark. Alright, well that was that. Now, as I say, we're on to the second one. I'm actually going to be saving Johann Kraus for last, just because he is the one where I'm going to try to do a little bit of the, you don't cut all the way through, but you shave a bit of the layer off, and to have kind of a more of a texture to the glows and the lights that comes through. I've only ever tried to do that once before. I think that was either last year or the year before. I think the year before. I don't think I did it very well, so it's something I'm kind of hesitant to try again, so I'm going to leave that for the very end. We'll start with the Celtic symbol, because of the three, that is, relatively speaking, going to be the easiest. So the symbol that I ended up going with, we can just try to see if that's going to show up at all. Don't think it is. But in this case, you've kind of got your 3 spirals, because again we're looking at Celtic, you've got 3 cropping up a lot there within a circle. Then I've also chosen to add in some other kind of notches within the spiralling arms themselves. And again, I'll definitely do those first before I make the arms freestanding in the air, because again, structural integrity and that sort of thing. So if we start with the triangle that's right in the middle, so just cut off the edge there. I'm just going to turn the casserole bowl around so a bit more of an edge to just deposit stuff on. And then at that point, I think I don't really have a choice other than with the hairpin. I think that's what most of these are going to come down to in this sense. So again, just some quick rapid movements in and out just to help to cut away with what is otherwise a blunt instrument. Some bit more things. This is going to fit. No, it's too big. Try the pencil. No, again, that's too big as well. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get anything better than the hairpin in this case. Just try to do what we can to widen the hole as much as possible as it stands. Just make sure, yes, I am coming through the other side, so at least a little bit of light should come through. That being said, it's like with the pupils and the cat's eyes before, this isn't the bit where it's the most important the light comes through, because most of the light is going to be coming around the arms instead. So I'm not even using the knife at all at this point, I am just cutting through with a spoon. Try to get that shape. Alright, now to the main. So, if I just show that there, that first third of it, that shows up at all, that's basically what I'm going to be doing with these other 3 sections as well. I'm actually lucky that that one turned out the way it did, because I actually did it in the wrong order. I started from the outside and worked into the spiral, and really I should have worked from the centre of the spiral outwards, because right at the end there was risk of it tearing. What did I say last time? I did it in the wrong order. I worked outwards and in when I should have worked inwards and out. What have I done the second time? The exact same thing. Oh, well, again, I really shouldn't say anything in case I jinx it, but this one seems to have worked out slightly better. It's not as close to breaking. Yeah, that would seem to be our second one. Now, just third. Also thinking, obviously, if we need to fill space at all, other than with commentary, something that I could do without focusing on it, could of course be singing, but I don't know, I mean, I don't know how. Because isn't it like you're not even supposed to sing the songs yourself for too long without potentially getting the copyright claim or whatever. I mean, not that I monetize these videos anyway. I couldn't even if I wanted to, but I don't. So I just don't think it would make a difference. Just saying about the copyright stuff. Obviously, well, if you've seen it, the other video that went up today about the camera updates, that I did include a song in that at the end, so like in the backing audio and stuff. Did get a copyright claim for that, which is fair enough. Again, not like a strike or anything, just an acknowledgement of if you were to try to make money off this, if ads were to run on this video, then the I think it's strictly speaking it was the CD company rather than the band who would get the money, but again, money isn't being earned on those videos anyway, so it doesn't make a difference to me. It was just a end gag thing, so I'm not that fussed. Okay, yeah, we have our first one, Celtic symbol now. Its entirety, we'll have to see if the little slashes along the arms show up at all when you actually put the light in there, but the main overall shape is definitely going to be seen. Next up, the Tooth Fairy. So this is kind of like with that Celtic symbol, this next one is kind of framed within a circle. That's how I've chosen to do it, and then we're kind of cutting out sections of that. Oh, this one is going to be trickier to do. Alright, what order do I want to do things in? Okay, let's just poke out the eyes straight off, might as well, because they're small and round and easy enough to do. Yeah, that works there, more or less. I'll wind up a little bit. Alright. Now it's going to come to teeth, and the teeth here are going to be even worse than the one for Gryle that we did at the very beginning of the video, because at least his face was taking up a lot of the side of the pumpkin. This one is much smaller, but I still want to okay, we'll see how this goes. If it comes down to it, I could just get rid of the teeth entirely and just have one gaping mouth, which, if you've seen the design of the Hellboy Tooth Fairies, fair enough. Yeah, I think agree that kind of works anyway. Oh well, you can have a cracked tooth. I mean, I'm not sure how well this is all gonna show up. Anyway, the actual distinctions being made here, but yeah, born with a silver spoon in his mouth. There's some gaps that the light can potentially get through. Yeah, because I've got some pumpkin juice kind of clogging up the incisions, but yeah, it's okay. Alright, right, probably best do. Let's do this on the chest next. Yeah, I can't believe I forgot this tool on the penknife at the beginning, because this is the one actually that I have ended up using the most, because it is smaller and it's also got the teeth, so it's able to be more precise in a couple of ways. Okay, you have to use it kind of as a grabbing tool, or a hook, I should say. I was doing the initial gutting of these things, And the diagrams will have YouTube on in the background, again, per that previous comment about copyright claims. Yeah, that's also definitely not going to be happening. So what seems to be happening here in this case, which is interesting, which I don't think has happened so much in the previous cases, so with these latest decisions, is that rather than fully pushing stuff through the hole, it's kind of just moving the matter to the left and right out of the way. So we're just shifting the kind of gap that does exist around and not actually making it any bigger or clear, although now I have with a trusty spoon. Right, then I've decided to also have the detail of some holes in the wings, so I'll just carve those out as well. This bit doesn't really matter as much if I stick to what I drew initially or not, because these are just holes. Pesky hair. Yeah, these are just holes and wings. They could really, in theory, be anything, so long as they're still within the larger perimeters. And now for the gaps that fully line up with the perimeter of the circle outline that I've set. So the smallest of these are going to be between the legs to begin with. As this thing has 4 legs, so we're going to have 3 gaps that are between them. Cool. And then the rest, I'll just work my way upwards. I've torn arm slightly there, but it's still connected, which is the main thing. Obviously it's not ideal, but could be worse. Just neaten up the inside there. Basically done the same thing there with the legs, so this is getting a bit more precise, now maybe going slightly too quickly. But it will still be connected, so long as I don't mess it up completely. Just had the recording stop on me because apparently 3 hours is at such a duration the computer's like, this is probably going to be difficult to save later, so we're going to stop now. That's fine because I noticed straight away, and also it happened just as I was done with this one. So now we have our Tooth Fairy, which you can maybe won't show up brilliantly here, but hopefully when we have our lights, and also again if I can find a way to edit in an image, and obviously we can look at it side by side. If not, Hellboy, Tooth Fairy, just googling that should show you what you need to see. But now, speaking of Hellboy, we're on to our last carving, this complex one here of Johann Kraus. So, where to start? Should I start by trying to do the shaving stuff? Quite possibly. So, I took this out and put it with me just in case. Doubt this is going to work, but slightly. Okay. I was thinking it might not actually be able to get to the surface, and in fact it probably won't for other places. But no, that's going to be way too inefficient as I suspected it might be. Okay, so how are we going to just carve away slight amounts? And it's probably just going to be from using a knife, therefore, but it's kind of maybe. If we go back to the main one we were using before, and again, this is now a problem with this because all the bits get filled up with pumpkin gunk, so that's going to need washing out later. But if we get back to this, let's see, can we just shave off these bits here? So the reason I'm doing this is because with Pym in his suit, you obviously have a lot of smoke and stuff coming around, missing fog. So I wanted to try to do this, where if it works, we can get some light coming through, but not completely, so it has that kind of alternate feel to it. I don't know how deep I would really want to go with this. It might actually be easier once I've taken out these other bits that I will be fully removing. It might be easier to... Okay, yeah, I'll do that first then. So if we just... What I'll probably do actually is just continue carving as normal, forgetting about the shaving off stuff. We'll see how it looks once everything else is done with the candle inside, if that does make effect or not, and if it hasn't, which quite possibly it hasn't, because I've literally only taken the top, just the top layer off, then I'll go back and add some more, or else then I'll remove some more. Accurate. So it's been at the top. I didn't represent the entire dome because the entire dome would be coming around here, but it's kind of showing the top of it and the back. Because I could have just done this entire bit, cut that out and said that's the dome there, but I wanted to show off something of like the internal mechanisms within, which is what this bit is. I also had the screwdriver, which I'm pretty sure I've used before as well. There's another blunt thing. Oh well. We should have checked again what all of the implements were on this. Too late now. It's fair to say, I don't really know what I'm doing with this video, do I? In terms of what it is for a viewing experience. But, oh well. Yeah, I do wish could have found a way for the camera to be slightly better, but it's just... Again, maybe you would have been happy with me not being in frame at all. That's quite possible. Could have just had a shot of just my hands working on this, but far, far too late for that now. So I was kind of expecting this to happen at some point with how the designs were, but yeah, I have kind of lost the integrity of both of these. They are still just attached, but you can kind of see where the knife marks have gone through them. It's kind of the benefit of it having depth. It's still attached further behind, But yeah, this bit of the breathing apparatus down the bottom, it's now definitely a lot weaker. In retrospect, maybe I should have also recorded the part of the process of actually working out how the carving was going to work, like so looking at the actual original picture or the source material and thinking how will each section of that come across in the carving, because again that would give, first of all, something more for you to listen to in terms of this video, but also further insight into the decision making process, how this goes on as a whole, rather than just jumping straight to, okay, we're just kind of ready to pick up the knives. The other thing with this one is that if this doesn't immediately look like what it's supposed to, if people don't know about the character, potentially this could just come across as a general monster face anyway, with the vents like eyes and this just a weird forehead and whiskers and whatever. So dual purpose, let's say. And there we have it. The last one is done, unless I subsequently decide I want to do more with, you know, the sections I was trying to shave off the top layer for, whatever. If I just try to show this to you here, it's probably not going to... it's okay. Yeah, this one has ended up with the most faults of all the ones that I've done here today. Possibly because it was the one that had kind of the most elements to it, all kind of really close together, or maybe because it was the last one and it's gone midnight and I'm hungry. Either way, yes, I think so. Well, all there really is to do otherwise is say, just like with the previous one, check out what it looks like under the candle. With that, all I really have left to say is, once again, hope you had a good Halloween, and I will see you all next time.